Calling all golfers, do you want to enhance your ball striking, hit longer golf shots and generally lower your scores? That's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do in this video by stopping doing this one crucial error that so many people tend to make in their backswing. Hi everyone, my name is James Robinson, welcome back to Get Good at Golf. Do you do this? And that is a great example of what I see so many people do, generally under pressure. You see, a pressure situation on the golf course can cause us to do very strange things, because if we look at the replay here on the Golf Sun system, we're getting straight into the replay here, guys. What do you think to this? If I were to slow this down now, what happens in that downswing? Is there any weight transfer? No. Have I moved off the ball on the way back? Yes, and this can be a huge problem for people if you try to create too much power when you are under a little bit of pressure. Generally what you'll try to do is you'll help the ball up in the air. When we know with an iron especially, we're trying to compress that down into the ground. We're trying to get the low point after impact, and to do that we need to do a couple of things to make sure the golf swing is working as it should do. So when you take the club away, this is where it gets interesting, and this is where a lot of people generally mess up with this. We do want a weight transfer. We want the club to move away, then we want to rotate up into the top of the backswing, and I want most of my pressure in that trail side. That gives me something to push off and rotate off. It's almost like a sprinter in the blocks. If you don't do that, there's no blocks, you're at a massive disadvantage to try and create that power or that rotation. So from the top of the backswing here, I need to make sure that I've coiled up, I've got the weight into the trail side, but I've not slid off the ball here. That's something which you'll be able to tell if the sternum moves. And again, I'll show you another example of how people can do this, and you might think, oh well, it generally works for me because I've played some of my better shots like that, and you can get away with it. If I were to slide off the ball and then really activate my hands, this is how difficult it is. Give me one more chance, because that wasn't a very good strike. And this is so interesting because if I try to do this, sometimes I can do it really well, sometimes I really struggle with it, but this time, there. So I managed to get that ball up in the air. It's not slicing, it's moving to the left. It's a big high draw. Success, sort of. Then we look at the replay of this and you start to see how the swing's actually broken down massively. So if I view this swing on the Golf Sun system and then we slow this down, you can see how on the way down, the hands have to massively flip and rotate over there. And that's not what we want at all. If we look at the impact here, look what happens to that club face. I'll show you again, and we'll slow this down. That is an awful strike, and that is what can be a massive, massive disadvantage to you, because we don't want to slide away from that golf ball. We don't want to sway off it. We need to make sure we can rotate the body around, get down into the ball, and you can see that nice finishing position. That's a much better ball flight. It's gone a lot further. That's what we want to do, guys. Make sure you don't slide off it, because then you're going to have to slide back into it or sway back into it. And we don't want a motion like this. We want a rotational motion. And Chris is going to give us all a really good drill to do that, because if you want to transform your ball striking, hit straighter golf shots, and generally, oh, I think I've got it now, and generally play better golf, that is how to do it. Look at that little penetrating one. Lovely.
So one of the big causes of moving off the golf ball is stance width, and you'll see in a previous video earlier in the week we talked about how that can be a factor for misstriking the ball or turning the ball to the left, pushing the ball to the right, whether it's too wide or too narrow. So if I get my stance a little bit too wide, often the case is that I will want to shift over. And a lot of people talk about loading that weight onto the right, and what we start to see is that somebody will take their address, they really go, yeah, I've got to get onto my right hand side. From here, am I going to be able to move? You think if you was going to jump to your left, if you did this, I'm not really going to be able to jump very far to my left. And that's exactly what we're trying to do when we're trying to hit a golf shot. We're trying to load into the right, and like James mentioned, push off from that right hand side if you're a right-handed golfer. So the opposite then is, if I start to get too narrow, we'll start to see that it all becomes a little bit too much rotation. And from this position here, I've stood up, I'm not in my angles, I can't generate any kind of speed into that. So how do I get a more centered rotation? So we've got to think about what can I do drill-wise to do that. And one good way to do this and get a feel if you can achieve it is make some swings without hitting a golf ball, but just by tapping your feet. So if my feet are tapping, I can turn up to the top of my backswing, but I can't move off that ball. So I can't move off because my feet are moving. I will turn much more centered. You'll start to feel, because I certainly have, start to feel my core work a lot harder.
Doing it work, mate, are you?
I haven't really got a core, but it certainly felt like I was putting a lot more stress on turning and loading into my right hand side. And from there we can make some swings that you might do the steps, go back and then stop and hit that. So we've loaded better in the backswing, because we all know we have to be loading correctly in this backswing to get any kind of power into that shot. Once I've got my feet too wide, you'll see it'll be very hard to get any kind of turn. So I'm not going to be able to turn centered. If my stance is too wide, I'll have to lift with my arms. And is that a strong position in a golf shot? No, I'm going to have to try and recover. I'm going to try to flip my hands at that, and I might get that shot there, which we've got a glory, which got a fantastic 5.84 yards carry. That's not going to be helpful on a golf course, especially, like James mentioned, when we're in a pressure situation. We're trying to hit at the golf ball, we're trying to get, all right, I need to get this ball in the air, and we try and do that any way that we can. So once we've done that, we can start to do that drill of, okay, I'm going to step into my backswing, I'm shoulder width apart, I'm going to step into my backswing, and then from there, I'm going to hit that shot. You'll see, because I'm stepping, I'm going to be able to generate as much speed as possible, but because I've got a centered strike, that still carried a ridiculously long way of 189 yards when I've just rotated centered. If I can do that, I'm going to do exactly like I did there, compress the ball a lot better. I'm going to get a much more solid strike. And if we look at what James showed us earlier, the club data here, we're going to start to see that there's no rotation in that club face. If we think about back to James's shot, you see I've not got no rotation. That is straight out of the center of the golf club, which we know means I'm going to get the ball launching in a better direction. I'm going to get it launching lower. It's going to go further, and hopefully that's going to help you get good at golf. But once we've done that, we then need to put that into a few swings. So once we've had a few practices, let's go in, let's see if we can repeat that now without doing the steps. And that one's launched even straighter. I've timed that well. And if we go straight into those numbers, we'll see that's carried 191 yards, so another 10 yards without doing that drill. So straight away, once I've got the freedom of not doing the steps, I've gained even more distance, and that's what we want to see. If we go onto there, if we watch the club face, it opened ever so slightly, but it's a lot more solid than when we saw James doing a motion that we see time and time again on the driving range. So plenty of repetitions of getting this feel. Once we've done this plenty of times and load into the top, let's then put it back into the normal swing. Let's get over the ball, let's feel comfortable, turn around the center.
He's on fire.
That's another one straight down the line. Let's see the carry. Oh, 2 yards shorter. I'm getting fatigued. But guys, hopefully you can use that drill to help you get good at golf.